Today is a tutorial on how to complete the RPA. Let's go. Hey everybody, we're the Realtor's Toolbox. I'm Realtor Rich.
I'm Michelle Haas.
And we got some exciting stuff in line for today. Michelle, you want to dive in and tell them?
We're talking about the RPA, and we are starting from the beginning.
Right. Tutorial. Today is a tutorial. How to complete it. Fill it out. What blanks do you fill in and how do you do it?
Yeah. Let's check this out. I'm going to start from the beginning. I mentioned that. This is the car website. This is the first place you're going to go. So you took your buyers out to go see a house, probably many houses, and they finally found one. So we're going to come to our car website. By now you have access to this website. Everybody say hi, Neil.
Hi, Neil.
Here, I'll show you something. We'll switch it up. Or maybe you'll find Tiffany. Hello.
Nice. That's awesome.
I'm logged in already, but I'm going to start with the big circle here. You can kind of see where my hand is. And then I'll look a little like this, and I'm going to click on where it says transactions on the left, and I'll click on this yellow button here.
So this is the transactions page. This is where you land.
When I sort out my transactions page, I sort mine out by name. And I know other people who use an address instead. Either way, whatever works for you, this is your workspace. I like to use names because that's how I remember. And over here in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see a new button. I want to click on new. If I have a new listing or new purchase offer, new lease listing, a quick e-sign, whatever you're doing. In our case, today we're working on the RPA, so I'm going to choose new purchase or offer. It's going to ask me some information here, right? So I'm going to make something up. Oops. I'm going to make up Joe Buyer for the sake of our example. If your listing is already in the MLS, you can use this MLS Connect button. For our particular example, I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to just make up one. So I'm going to make up 234 Main Street, the city of Lincoln. I work in Lincoln sometimes. California, 95648. And it's a residential property. And for our example, and I'm going to save it. I want to fill in as much information as I can. It's going to help me. Some of this will be pulled in if I use that eConnect option. I didn't. So I might have a parcel number. I'm just going to make one up just for our example. A parcel number is sort of like a social security number for a house, right? It's an identification. I'm going to put in a year built, whatever I can. I'm going to put in today's date, offer date, today's date. I'm going to put in 600,000 amount financed. We'll get into this and we'll talk about it more, but let's just say the amount financed is 400,000. I'll talk more about this pretty soon here. I don't have an escrow number yet. This buying side commission, listing side commission, it doesn't affect this contract. But if you like to spend your money in your mind before you actually get it, this is fun, right? Yeah. So say my commission's 2.5%. Oh, hey, $15,000. Oh, wait, I hired a transaction coordinator. Well, that kind of subtracted some of that out. You know, I can kind of have some fun here and play with some numbers. But for me, in my mind, I'm already spending the money, so I don't do that. So you can leave it alone. On the very top over here, I'm going to click on parties. The first thing I want to do is add in my buyer here. Buyer number 1. So first name for buyer number 1. His name's Joe. Middle name, I'm not going to put that in here. Last name, his last name is Buyer.
So Michelle, by filling all this in, this is going to help populate the residential purchase agreement later, correct?
Absolutely. This is going to help make your job easier during the contract. If there was a second buyer, third buyer, I can keep doing that. As I'm writing the RPA, I'm not going to put the seller name in there. I'm not going to worry about that. But what I do want to put in here that helps is whoever the listing agent is. I want to fill this out as much as possible. So what I filled out was the buyer and as much information as I could for him. The listing agent, see right here, it says listing agent and broker. That information is here. So then I'm going to move over to the next tab. Right now it's blank. On the very right-hand side, I'll click on all forms. This is all the forms that you have access to. Right here in the search bar, I'll start typing in residential. So right here, it starts to populate for me. And the first option says California Residential Purchase Agreement. That's the one I want. And once I click on it, it populates. I'll get rid of that. It populates here in the middle, and I'm going to open it. Here it is, the very top of this document. We're going to start with some disclosures here. So I'm just going to come down here and fill in the very first box under buyer. I'm specifying that we are talking about the buyer, and here's his name populated here, Joe Buyer, and the agent. First, I'm going to fill in my broker and my broker number, and then I'm going to choose my name. I'm representing the buyer. Rich is going to represent the seller. My name here and my license number that is specific to me. Right now, I can't click on that date. That's okay. We'll fill it in shortly. And then I'm going to come down to the second page. This is Fair Housing and Discrimination Advisory. There's really nothing for us to fill out on this document. And what we'll do is have the buyer sign this document. If the seller accepts our offer, then they'll sign this also. Possible representation of more than one buyer or seller.
I think at different times you could be representing multiple clients. You may be showing that property to not just the client who's writing the offer. There could be somebody else. This is just to make them aware of that it's a possibility.
The buyer's name auto-populated for me. Because I filled in that other section, my name is here, my brokerage number is here, and the listing agent on this one is Rich, and he's right here also. Wire fraud's a big deal these days. This is new. Buyer Homeowners Insurance Advisory.
It's a lot like the home inspection advisory.
Home insurance has changed so much just over the last couple years. So this particular advisory is new.
And it's really just like a lot of the disclosures, bringing the buyer's attention to things that are important in their purchase of real estate.
Good point. I like it.
Having homeowners insurance is mandatory if you're getting home financing. If you're paying cash, it's still kind of mandatory because you need to protect your investment. But certainly at that point, it could be optional, I guess.
So now we really get into the meat and potatoes. On the very top left, I'm going to put in today's date. And here he is, Joe Buyer. He wants to buy 234 Main Street and the city of Lincoln. That for us is Placer County. The zip code, assessor's parcel number is here. Section 2, you'll see it says 2 right here, agency. It didn't give me the X's and the squares that I wanted. Rich is over here and he's representing the seller. I'm over here, I'm representing the buyer. Make sure you have those X's in there because otherwise the listing agent may kick it back. And then also if nobody catches it, there's another form that you fill out. It's kind of embarrassing. Don't do that.
Okay, so item 3 is the terms of purchase and allocation of costs. And so we start with 3A, the purchase price, which is $600,000. Item B is going to be your close of escrow. So how long is the escrow going to be? Typically 30 days, although you could shorten it if you needed to, and in some cases you will. But in this case, we're going to mark 30 days. Expiration of the offer. Usually we're giving them 3 days to review it. Sometimes the sellers could be out of town or unavailable. It might take a minute. But in other cases, maybe you only give them 24 or 48 hours to review it. That's fine. The initial deposit amount. This is your earnest money deposit. So you've looked at houses, they found one they like. You're going to put in a 1% earnest money deposit. This is where it goes. And that's the money that just says, hey, we like the house. Here's our deposit along with our offer to show you we're serious. We're not going to do an increased deposit. And then loan amounts. Now, what's our loan amount? If we have a 10% down payment, then that's going to make the loan amount 90%, which is going to be $540,000. And so you've already got $6,000 in there. And if you jump down to the bottom to keep the math clean, the balance of the money for the down payment is $54,000. You've already got $6,000 that you put up in your EMD. And so you've got the $6,000 plus your loan of $540,000. The balance of $54,000 adds up to $600,000. And so that makes the math work. And then there's a couple places at the bottom for buyers and sellers to initial, which we'll take care of that at the end when we set up the electronic signatures. Okay, cool. Let's jump to the next page.
If there was any seller credit to the buyer, at this point, we don't normally see this very much. We would put it in here if that were the case. Any additional finance terms, we can write some notes here if it applies. Here is one that is new for this year. Seller agrees to pay the obligation of buyer to compensate buyer's broker under a separate agreement. Your brokerage will advise you on how they want you to fill this out. I'm going to check it here and show you what it's like at the bottom. Anytime I add a X in a box, the appropriate form is added on here. See here towards the very right-hand side? Here they are collecting for me, and they stack up for me on the bottom. So for now, I'm going to add that. We'll talk about it more soon, and I'm going to keep going for now. Verification of all cash, verification of down payment, verification of loan application.
Because it's not all cash, we're not going to be marking the box here. Verification of down payment and closing costs. Very often we're supplying a copy of a bank statement to provide proof of funds. Verification of loan application. Obviously, the seller wants to know that the buyer's credit's been checked and that they're qualifying for a loan. They're going to want a pre-approval letter. That would go, we would mark that box, and then that would be provided. If it hadn't been done, most good agents are making sure that their buyers are pre-qualified before they're out showing property because they don't want to waste their time, and that would be a good practice for you as well. Final verification of condition, that's just a final walkthrough within 5 days of closing at the end, so we leave that at 5 days. We're not talking about an assignment, so there's not going to be an assignment of this contract. And then contingencies. A loan contingency of 17 days is pretty easy and simple. Appraisal contingency, appraisal typically is contingency also of the loan, and we've got 17 days, but we may want to cut that down to make the offer more attractive. Very often we're putting 10 days in there. So we could put 10 days in there. And then
ask your lender.
Yes. Ask your lender.
Don't just do it. Ask the lender first.
Yes. Sometimes the industry can be super busy and the appraisers can get backed up, and maybe it's just going to take longer than 6, 7, 8 days to get them out there. And then by the time they return the report, it's 10, 12, 14 days. We've seen markets where it was 21 days. And so hopefully that doesn't occur, or more people get their appraiser's license and it takes the burden off that. But investigation of property, cover that, Michelle?
I always make my inspections as fast as I can.
Yes.
I talk to my buyers about making this quick. If this offer is accepted over the weekend or on Monday, I will coordinate the inspections for our area. We do home inspection, pest inspection, all very normal. I do those right away. And one reason is because the buyers need to know right away what they're getting into. It mentally prepares them, but also it shows the seller that we're serious, that we're on top of it. I don't want to wait that long, 17 days. I don't want to wait that long to start doing any inspections. I want to book it as soon as I can. I get their reports as soon as I can. If I'm negotiating repairs, I get that going as soon as I can, especially if repairs are possibly needed and the seller would be willing to make those repairs. Then I want to give them time to do those quickly. Also, whatever the situation is, whatever the market is, I make this quick. So I bring it down.
It's super important. This is a contract and time is of the essence. The
Right.
sellers are taking the property off the market, which means they're beginning to lose opportunities to sell it to somebody else. So as a courtesy to the sellers and also as a courtesy to the buyers, they need to know if this property is in a substandard condition. I mean, are there major problems here? They want to know right away because they put up an earnest money deposit. They need to get that money back and get out and keep looking for houses. And everybody's in a different situation, but you definitely as the agent, you want to keep them looking while they're in the looking mode. So cut these timeframes down. Everybody will appreciate it, and it makes for a more attractive offer. So 8 days is great. I love it. If you can get your inspectors out there and get all the inspections done and review the reports, man, everybody's loving it. You're moving forward. You have to remember a 30-day escrow. If there's 4 weekends in there, you got 8 days that are just lost to weekend days when people aren't working. So that only leaves you 22 working days to close the entire transaction. So there's a lot that happens, and we definitely want to honor the fact that this is a binding contract, and we need to honor the timeframes in it.
There's some documents here to review, and I don't need to shorten those. Part of it is going to depend on when I get those from the listing agent. I keep those at 17. It's not needed to be anything shorter than that. The sale of buyer's property is not a contingency unless it is checked here. So for the sake of exercise, I'm going to check it. And you'll see here on the right-hand side, it is added to our stack of paperwork. If they're buying it, they don't have to sell another house. I don't need this. I can uncheck it if I want to. But if they're going to have to sell a house and then move, then I'm going to use that there. We move over to possession. Time of possession. This one I usually leave blank, and it's going to depend on recording. Seller occupied or vacant units. So this one is worth having a conversation with the listing agreement. If there are tenants in place, we need to know when those tenants are going to be out. And this may have these two actually, occupied units by tenants or anyone other than the seller. So you may be using a couple of these forms if tenants are in place. Documents, fees, compliance. If the home is in an HOA, we may be using these things.
Carbon monoxide detectors, water heater bracing, those are all health and safety issues. Yeah. So that stuff's all got to be in there. You really want all that in there right out the gate so that when the appraiser comes out, they check the boxes on all those things and then you don't have to have a reinspection.
So documents, fees, and compliance, I always just leave blank, have the buyers sign here on the bottom and keep going.
Haha, here we are. Items included and excluded. It's funny. I was talking with a gentleman today who is out of state. He's closing on the sale of his property, and he had a couple of big screen TVs that were mounted to the walls, and they did the final walkthrough with the buyers of his house. And the buyers thought that because they were fastened to the walls that the 2 big screen 80-inch TVs came with the house, but they hadn't included it in this part of the contract as additional items. And so they had to all have a big discussion about, no, the TVs aren't staying. But I can
see how that can be confusing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but it's important to communicate that. So those are conversations we'll have with the buyers after they see the house. Is there something that they want to stay? Like a good example would be they're buying a house that's on 6 acres and there's a riding lawnmower. Maybe they want to mark additional items and include the riding lawnmower in the purchase because they're going to need it. And maybe the sellers are happy to let them have it because they're moving to a place where they have no lawn at all and they don't need a riding lawnmower, right? So maybe they'll just include it and agree to it.
So this is where it's worth having a conversation with the listing agent also. It's normal for the stove and the dishwasher and the microwave to stay, but other items like the fridge, they may want to take with them. They may not. Yeah, washer and dryer. Maybe they have a wine fridge. If you want that to stay there, you should say so. But you'll see other items marked here, and maybe there's something that the listing agent will say is excluded. Light fixture in the dining room is not going to stay. The seller is going to take that with them. So maybe it's something that your buyer does not want. I had one buyer who thought the chicken coop was disgusting, and they said, make the seller take it with them, make the seller take it down. So we excluded the chicken coop. And that might sound funny, but if you're not that person, then you're not that person. So you may say something like that. Natural hazard zone disclosure report, including tax information.
So we're going to mark seller on that, right?
It's pretty normal for the seller to do that. Again, I would ask the listing agent, did you guys order one already? Is there one in place? If not, just choose one. It's fine. It's only $29 more to include the environmental portion of that. Any additional report?
You just mark seller if there is anything.
So here's one that might apply. Wildfire disclosure. We'll ask the seller to pay for that, and we'll see here who's on the list. If I was using Snap NHD up here, for example, I'll do it again to keep it consistent and keep it easy. Smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors, water heater. It is normal for the seller to take care of that. These other ones, I typically leave blank. These other two. Under escrow, in our area, in the Northern California area, escrow and title are one. So the buyer could pay for the whole thing. The seller could pay for the whole thing, or both. You might see some agents, they'll kind of do something like this where they say 50-50. If it says both, it means 50-50. You'll notice one that says each to pay their own fees. I didn't really understand this, and a while back I called a title company and I asked, what does that mean? And they said it's the same as 50-50. So maybe in Southern California it's treated a little bit differently, not with us. Escrow holder. Again, something to ask the listing agent about. Have you opened escrow already? And if you have, who is it with? So this could be all kinds of great companies out there.
Are you going to write that in when you write up the offer typically, if you see it in the MLS, or will you leave it blank ever?
I'd write it in. I'd keep it clean. It reduces a little paperwork if it's not in here. Owner's title insurance policy. I leave that on the seller. They are the owner, so we'll leave it there. Title company, if different, so it'll be the same. Buyer's lender title insurance policy.
There's no box to check. The buyer is getting the lender's title insurance policy and they're going to pay for it. County transfer tax, city transfer tax. Typically, we're marking seller to pay it. Again, these things are negotiable, but it's pretty customary in our market. We're typically, hey, we're going to have the seller pay those. If there's an HOA fee, they've got seller and buyer already pre-filled out. Homeowners Association transfer fees, we're going to put seller to pay them. It's negotiable. I mean, you could split it or whatever. It depends on how competitive your offer is. But in this case, we're going to mark seller. What about private transfer fees, Michelle?
I've never used it.
Me either. And then there's a couple of blank lines for any other additionals. Home warranty plan chosen by buyer. Coverage includes, but is not limited to. I mean, typically we're doing home warranty, including air conditioning, right? Got to have that in Northern California. It gets hot in the summer months.
What I usually do is point out to the buyer that a home warranty is an option. We can ask for the seller to pay for it. They may counter it out. They may not. They could offer to pay 50-50, so they can both pay part of it. And I give them 4 or 5 brochures from different home warranty companies, and I let them look at which companies do they like for this home, which options would be best. Something in the range of $400 or $500 is pretty typical of what I see. So if they said, oh, I want this deluxe plan and this is the one I want, and on the brochure it says it's $550, what I'll do is I'll put in here in this line the $550 that the brochure talks about. Or they found something online and they just tell me which, what they're talking about here. Here's a list of the most common ones, and I can write in another one if I want to. So maybe I chose Home Guard, home warranty, and that's the one they choose. This will be ordered either by the buyer's agent or the escrow company. Sometimes they just do it and make sure that the buyer has that in place. It will be done before escrow closes. I normally do not advise a buyer to skip this unless they're a general contractor and they're just really going to gut this place. If they are into a total rehab situation, okay, waive it. But otherwise, you don't have a reason to waive it. It's something in case something happens. If you have other terms here, you can fill out something if you need to just by clicking on this space. And you'll notice here on the bottom is a place for the buyer to sign. Here are 4 in the middle that are checked for you automatically. These 4. If you are selling a manufactured home, this is where you would put a little X in this box right here. And you'll notice several other addendas, advisories that you can add here if you want to. SBSA is usually something that will come with disclosures later, so I leave that alone. I don't add it at this time. And usually I don't do anything here. I leave it on these 4 and keep going.
Yep, sounds good.
And
anything else on this page? Just the initials at the bottom?
Initials at the bottom. So what we get to see here is explanations of what the previous pages have been talking about. So you'll see here, for example, number 7, closing and possession, and condition of property on closing. It will kind of illustrate, talk about, further explain what we were checking above. So that's what this is doing. Buyers will initial here and we'll keep going. The date still looks good. Address still looks good. We'll keep going on some more. Buyers will initial here and here and here.
Nothing to fill out on those pages.
No, you're just going to have them initial here. Give them time to read these things, go over it, know it. If you haven't read this, read it, because if they ask you, you want to have your answer ready, right? So here and another one. See, we have a few pages of this and this one and this one.
On that note, Michelle, I would recommend anybody, if you're a brand new agent, get a copy of this residential purchase agreement printed out.
Yeah.
You need to read through the entire thing. Take it one page at a time, make notes, make sure you understand it and you can explain it. Even maybe use Post-it notes where you can summarize, hey, the top part of this covered this, the middle covered this, the bottom covered this. You want to be able to summarize what's in the RPA as you go through it. You want to be able to explain briefly when you see certain things, what do they mean? Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to give your buyer the chance to read through and review everything in there. When you send it over, they can take the time to do that. And you can certainly go through some of it with them, but they may want some quiet time with this RPA to be able to review it. So if they want you to go over it, you want to be able to summarize it. So you do need to know and understand what's in the RPA, even though we're buzzing through it and showing you where to, fill in a few of the blanks, make sure the pages get initialed and signed. But you definitely need to know this RPA like the back of your hand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Section 29 under liquidated damages. So watch this couple of pages here that's talking about mediation, arbitration, damages, conflicts, right? This is what we're talking about in this one. On 29, buyers will initial there, but I will say under 31, they don't have to initial here. I represented an attorney who refused to initial this part because if they had a dispute and they couldn't agree, she was willing to do mediation, but she was not willing to go to arbitration because she was an attorney and all her friends are attorneys. So she didn't have to sign this one if she didn't want to. And the same with the seller. If They don't have to sign this one if they don't want to.
There is one thing. If
Yeah.
one of the parties signs and the other one doesn't, then it does not become incorporated as a part of the contract. Both parties have to agree to it if they're going to allow it to become a binding part of the contract.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And they do need to initial the bottom because it represents the page itself.
Yeah.
On the RPA, we're on page number 15.
Yes.
This top portion has to do with entity buyers. Whether your buyers have a trust or an LLC, an S Corp, whatever they're using, you would use this top portion. In the case of Joe Buyer, he's buying this for himself. And the signature, when it's time, will be right here on top and the date over on this side. Right now, I don't need to put that in there. His name is put in there for me. If the seller agrees, they fill out this portion here. If the seller's not accepting, they would initial here because so Joe Buyer signed in the middle of this page. He doesn't have to sign on the bottom of this page. And then there's this section here. What I really want to do is I want to put in my address that didn't pop over for me. It happens. This is my brokerage address. It might be tempting to kind of put in your personal. Do not put in your personal. My brokerage address is in San Ramon. This box here for escrow holder acknowledgement, it's tempting to start to fill in this particular box because I had the information on who the escrow company was, but I just leave it blank. And when the seller accepts this offer and then the escrow company gets their copy, they fill in this box how they like it. And then I end up getting a copy like the next day. So I'm just going to leave it blank for now, but I will have the buyer initial this particular page on this little box right here. Now we have a few more advisories. This one is called Buyer's Investigation Advisory. And as I scroll down here, the buyer will actually sign on this line here on the second page. Fair Appraisal Act Addendum, the buyer can sign on this particular line also and dated on the right. California Consumer Privacy Act Advisory, Disclosure and Notice. Don't sell their information. Have him sign this on the bottom.
Okay, this disclosure is the FHA/VA amendatory clause. So our transaction we selected was an FHA, which triggered for this to be included in the disclosures. So the amendatory clause basically says, if the property appraises for less than the offered price, the buyer can still purchase it, but they're going to be responsible for the difference in cash on their own. So FHA and VA will only finance up to what the amount of the appraisal is that comes in. So it's a great thing. They still let the buyers go through with the purchase, but they're going to have to bring the difference in on their own. So that's fine. And so we put our purchase price of $600,000 in here. That's the valuation amount. And then we scroll down and there's a place for the buyer to sign and date. And then we jump to, for your protection, get a home inspection. Super important to inspect the property.
Just sign there.
Sign and date it at the bottom.
Seller payment to buyer's broker. This is one of the newer forms. We're going to see more of these forms coming through. I want to make sure the date is here, the right address, buyer's name. And I'm concentrating on number 1 right now, up here on the top. Buyer representation agreement with compensation. If you are an agent who is doing this already right now, at the time of this recording, we're not required, but let's just say I did, and I'm going to ask for 2.5% here. But then also this particular seller is compensating the buyer's agent, which I do believe we'll keep seeing. Number 2, compensation from seller's broker to buyer's broker. And let's just say Rich's seller has offered 2.5%. I would add that here. And then I'm going to keep going, and Joe Buyer is going to sign here. Our next one, oh, this is fun. Okay, so contingency for sale of buyer's property. Let's just say, for example, the buyer I'm representing has a house that he still needs to sell in order to purchase this house. I need to communicate that with the listing agent. and I need to fill out this form to do that. So it already gave me the address and his name, but of course the date fell off. Let me put today's date back here. And I am going to communicate to the listing agent, what is he selling? Where is it? So maybe I'm just making this up. 555
Easy. There
Lincoln
you go.
Avenue in Lincoln. I like Lincoln. 95648. And that, oh, sorry, pet peeve. I got to fix that. Okay, capital CA, and I'm going to specify what he's selling. And I'm going to fill out as much of this as I can also. So I may supply an escrow number on C with a escrow company, whoever they're going to work with, and kind of fill in as much as I can here. And then at the bottom of the second page, have him sign it. And again, we're just communicating what is happening here as accurately as possible. And if that seller agrees to this, that seller will sign on the bottom there.
And Michelle, in this situation where we're talking about a contingency sale here, what triggered us to get this form in our RPA?
There was one of the options up above that triggered that form here. Yeah, definitely. You'll see on the right-hand side, all the forms that we've used today are listed here. So what I'm going to do is click Save. Whether you use DocuSign or DigiSign or any other kind of signing service, either way is fine. You'd get that over to your buyers up here in the upper right-hand corner, and then click on Prepare Signing.
Yes.
And then,
go ahead.
So then I'm going to switch this over to digital ink and then click on Next. Joe's going to sign and I'm going to sign. And then I'm going to choose Close.
Going to click Next.
And then on the side here, we'll click Next. So then we'll come here and see a little space here for Joe buyer to sign. And it says month, day, year on the right. And then my name is here, etc.
Yep. And the whole document, you're going to want to double check to make sure that it populated every place that you need signatures and initials.
Okay. So once I double check everything looks good, then I'm going to click on Next, right?
In fact, before you do that, just show them over here on the upper right, the name there. If you click on the name up there in the upper right corner, that's where you can choose who the buyer is. If you needed to select one, drag and drop, you just click on it. Click on
I see.
that, and then now you drag the sign here arrow. See the sign here arrow? Grab that.
Oh, popped over here.
Yep, and then you can drag that around and you put it anywhere that you need a signature. If for some reason something was missed,
I'll stick it there.
It's not going to happen, but you can put it there and then it becomes a part of the electronic signing in the document for
I'll make
later.
it smaller. Okay.
Yep, and if you go back to that and click on the pen under drag and drop again, click on the pen.
Yeah.
There you go. So there's also a date on the bottom left corner. There's a date stamp right there.
Date stamp.
So if you click that just will put the date right wherever you need it. And that way, when they sign, and the date will go in that spot next to the signature. So
okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, easy to do, really user friendly. As an agent, you know, it's a tool that you'll just learn to naturally do it. It'll be like picking up a pen and writing a letter or something if you ever do that, but something simple is what I'm trying to say.
Nice.
And, okay, and then from here, so we don't really, so then from here, you're going to hit next.
Yes. Oh, finalize signing setup. Send invitations. I think I want to do that.
Yep, you hit send invitations because you already have all the email addresses and everything ready to go. And now it's done and it's out to the client. And then you send your client a text or give them a call, tell them check their email. The offer is in their email. Then what'll take place is they'll go through and they'll complete their signing. You'll get a notification that it's completed. You'll come back into your transactions in your car forms, and then you will You'll set up your email and you'll attach that and email it over to the agent with a copy of your pre-approval letter, and then they've got everything they need to present the offer. Really simple, actually. I mean, we've taken a little bit of extra time to kind of explain some of the details, but overall, really pretty straightforward. And the California Association of Realtors forms are just an excellent set of documents for us to use in navigating the real estate space and helping buyers and sellers. And that's how you do. That's kind of a quick tutorial on how to fill out the RPA with a little bit of explanation, and how to log in the beginning, and how to complete the electronic signing at the end. Anything else, Michelle, or we got it?
I think we got it. I think Joe Buyer's going to be happy with his house, and everything's going to turn out great.
And you, the realtor, are going to be super happy when you close escrow, because you're going to earn a commission check and you're going to get paid. And we're the Realtors Toolbox. If this has been helpful to you, make sure that you like and subscribe and tell your friends. We'd love to have you and your friends join us on this journey. And we're here for you. We're going to provide tools and resources to support you in growing in your career in real estate. And I think that's a wrap for today.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.